Hey, Podnutsians. Welcome to Linux for the Rest of Us, episode 246. This episode is brought to you by our glorious Patreon supporter, John Barbagallo. And I'm pretty sure I just butchered his name, but I'm still thankful that he is here to support Podnuts. And somebody else who has been here to support Podnuts for a great number of years is Mr. Bruce Patterson. How's everything going, Bruce?
All right. And Dora, you nailed that right on the head.
That's what she said last night. I will say it's been a couple weeks since we did a show, and I have no problem in saying I am the one to blame. Between me and you, Bruce, I have had a hell of a lot of pain in my shoulders. My orthopedics from where I go said, yes, I need surgery on my right shoulder, but for the last month and a half, I've had extreme pain on my left shoulder. So I'm not looking forward to what's going to happen here in the next couple months.
Oh, okay. Well, that's unfortunate, but yeah, I'm glad you actually figured that part out, boy, because I got to tell you, nothing is worse as you get older. You don't recover as fast as you used to.
Well, and that's why I figure I better get this done now, because she was very nice in saying this could take a maximum of 6 months to actually fully recuperate from. And I firmly believe that once the surgery is done on my right shoulder, I complained about my left shoulder, I'm going to need a similar surgery on my left shoulder, which means I could be dealing with this discomfort, I'll say, for about a year.
You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to find out who is the team doctor for some of these sports teams, because I got to tell you, I want them on my HMO because I've seen hand fractures, broken legs, everything heal within the month. I want that.
They're too expensive, number one. Number two, they also have the liberty, those players, to sit around and do nothing all day except tend to their wounds, where we have to tend with our significant others, children's, pets, friends, external family, and then we put ourselves typically last on that list, where those people have no problem with putting themselves first because they earn enough money to say, you other people can be taken care of by servants, and other people, I'm going to take care of myself.
I'd like to think that Matt Harvey is my doppelganger because, see, we're both doing nothing right now except he's getting $11 million this year.
Just proves once again we're doing something wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
So I hope you had a good couple weeks. Hope you had a good Memorial Day weekend there, Bruce.
Oh, yeah. Again, like anything else, a holiday is a holiday. What is really kind of concerning in the work front is that I saw on some of the Slack channels, because I belong to the security one and the Azure Boston one here. And surprisingly, some of the people said that this past Memorial Day, their companies wanted to treat it as just another work day.
I don't want to say I'm not shocked, but I will say I saw a unusual amount of emails from my work account during the weekend where I'm thinking to myself, I'm not answering them. I'll answer them on Tuesday.
And I think that's one of the things, a conversation that keeps coming up during our staff meetings is, where do you draw that work home line? It's a lot easier than some folks realize, because what I do at 5 o'clock, I shut it off. I shut my machine off. And better yet, I have a separate work profile on my computer. I shut that off. I log it off and I walk away because, knowing that temptation there to work on something after the fact, no, I am not doing it. I've given far too many years to the place I'm already working with.
I agree. I uninstalled all work applications from my personal mobile device, and I did a similar thing to what you said. I now have multiple logins on a couple of my machines where one login is work focused, the other login is home focused. I will say, using KDE activities, you can achieve kind of the same thing, I did play around with that last week as well. It didn't seem as easy to understand as just simply creating a different login. I told my supervisors, my managers, everyone above me, like 3 steps up, that I'm not going to be answering any emails after hours for the foreseeable future. Between you and me, it's because A, they don't pay me enough. B, even if they offer me more money to do such a thing, I wouldn't, because I need to dedicate family time to family. And it's like I've told people for years, Door to Door Geek does not exist while my family is awake. While my kids and my wife are awake, I'm Steve McLaughlin. I'm not Door to Door Geek. All these shows that I do are always after 9 o'clock at night, because that's the time the kids are supposed to be in bed, and the wife is just sitting upstairs watching some murder, death, rape, drama TV series that she's engulfed with, to where I can come downstairs and do a show.
And it's kind of the same thing. I mean, right now, I have clearly defined lines, and that's one of the few things that I think is the only thing consistent about me. So I'll run with it.
Well, and consistency and stability are 2 of the things that I think I need to focus on, just doing better for myself, kind of thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It isn't easy. And I hate to say it like this. Nothing in life is easy, because it's not supposed to be easy. We're supposed to work towards things and then actually enjoy the reward of the accomplishment.
Now, today it's all based on bounties, and I hate it, because at this point we're also looking at a what do they call this? A gig economy, which is going to be more and more cutthroat on some of these things based on tips. We're kind of creating a I don't want to say it, but it's almost like a really awful form of work environment. Let's put it that way, instead of using the S word.
Yeah, it's polluted. And it's partly our own fault, because people like me and you went over, above and beyond so often that other people just seem like, well, that's expected now. I've made it very clear to everyone around me that day is over. This is a dawn of a new era, to where I'm going to bust my hump and do easily 2 weeks worth of normal employee work in about a day and a half. But when I'm not connected, don't ever expect to hear from me again.
Well, one minor note I'd like to bring up too. What's interesting is that we're in the unfortunate field of IT. And you may remember many years ago, there was the passage of what they call the K-1 visa, because there was a shortage of IT people here in America, which honestly, I can't believe that they could make such a claim, and that the news media would propagate such idiocy. I mean, in the Boston area alone, you figure there are at least 5,000 graduates a semester, who have IT experience. Well, anyway, the short of it is this. It's nice to see some of these things come full circle and then get bit by the very administration who wants to now revoke those K-1 visas. It was to import immigrants to come to America to work at a fraction of the cost, while allowing green card status. And now we want to close people out of this country. It's like, make up your mind.
Well, they'll never be satisfied. They'll never actually come to an actual conclusion. And yes, I do think it was all about, there wasn't enough people in this country willing to work at the cost that they were willing to pay out. So let's work in this other third party system to have people come in. And I'll say it like this. A huge majority of people in my building where I used to work, kind of thing, came over on those visas. And I have no problem in saying they are some of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. And some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I don't discourage them. I never discourage them on trying to do better by their family. In fact, the few that I've actually got to know, I am like really enlightened on how much money they're sending home, and they plan on, when they're done doing their job, they don't want to stay here. They want to go back home where their family is and try to make their own area better. And they understand that what they're doing is they're undercutting. In the old NFL days, you'd be like sliding across the defensive line, taking out an offensive lineman at their kneecaps kind of thing. And they know that's what they're doing, but they also know it's what they have to do. A couple of them have shown me very visible, like, they're upset at that's what they have to do, but at the same token, they say that's what they have to do for their family's sake.
Oh, and let's make no mistake about it. If the roles were reversed and it was the other way around, I'd absolutely be doing the same thing.
Yep.
No, I think my gripe actually has to do with the companies that are making these decisions, because they know full well what they're doing, no matter how bad they try to spin it the other way. But anyway, we'll end that discussion because we're not going to solve that problem today.
Well, we're not going to solve it, but I will say I got an email that was very close to this very topic, Bruce. A good friend of the show, JT Go Lively is his handle, his nick, his thing, and he basically asked me, do I have any more Think Penguin coupons? Which, yeah, I do. But then he said to me, what do you think of System 76 laptops? And I tried to respond in a very kind, open, earnest, honest way, which is, I don't believe that System 76 has Linux moving forward in their mind. They have personal wealth growth in mind. I much rather support a company like Think Penguin, which makes it very clear their goal is to push the open source initiative, to push Linux to be greater. System 76, Za Reason, and a couple other ones, I firmly believe don't care about Linux whatsoever, and they only care about profit. Does that mean I'm right? Hell no. It does mean I'm not going to give them any money, but I will tell you, everybody I've known who buys a System 76 laptop, because I don't know anybody who's ever bought a desktop from them, 80+% of them are insanely happy with their purchase years later. A couple people are really upset at the company and swear they'll never spend another dime with them again, but I will never spend money with a company that I believe is out for personal financial gain versus the greater ecosystem in general.
Well, and of course, they're not helping their situation by now charging for Pop OS. I mean, I think that, I get it. Yes, everybody's going to try and make money for the efforts that they have, but it is interesting that, that was a review from Jesse Smith in DistroWatch this past week. And, it's funny because I'd forgotten to ask him about that very question, because at the end of one of the articles that I'd seen, which I think was either Ars Technica or Phoronix, the question at the end was, it's a solid OS, no doubt about it. They've got good developers on it. But when the day is done, are you going to pay for something when, you can easily get one of our free distros now? I mean, yeah, I guess we need entry-level Linux users too.
We need all Linux users. And I'm not against paying for an operating system. But being a nerd, being a guy who wishes he had a gray beard, all I ever wish for is transparency. Not only tell me where my money is going, but show me where the code is coming from as well. Because hypothetically, let's just say a couple other developers of X operating system have extreme beliefs that I don't want to support. Or hypothetically, 2/3 of the developers come from countries that are not as privileged as where I'm at, and every dollar I give becomes $18 in their local economy. Well, then damn it, I feel even better spending the money. But when I look at things like that, I see zero transparency, which means my money is going to buying somebody a Corvette or a Mercedes Benz, and it's not going to normal kind of people.
No, I agree with that. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because a little bit later we have an article we're going to talk about where they actually gave the salaries of a couple of their developers, but we'll save that when we hit Creta.
Very cool, very cool. The link I had to bring, and honestly, Bruce, it's been in the notes since I want to say late April. I am not a super hardcore nerd when it comes to Linux. I'm not. I'm really an actual light user. But when I see a tool that is very easy to install, very easy to configure, and surfaces immense amounts of data to someone like me, then I am like completely on it. And this is a good example to me of that. It is called Bash Top, BASH TOP. I do believe you need to have the Born Again shell or the Bash shell installed for this to work. If you go to the GitHub page link in the notes and you scroll about halfway down, you will see a unbelievably well crafted command line interface kind of thing. It's N curses type interface, but is displaying immense amounts of data. It's showing you each core, how much they're being taxed, and a short history of each one. Then it goes through your memory, how much of that is being used, how much of your disk are being used, what's the top processes in RAM, in processor, in swap, and it shows you your network activity for X amount of time too. This to me is the example of how something on the command line can be, in no short terms, absolutely gorgeous.
Now, one of the things I wanted to bring in here, a couple of things. If you want to see this actually demonstrated real time, there's actually another YouTuber, DistroTube of all things, actually shows this working live, and it's a phenomenal thing to see. And just a quick breakdown for the folks who are viewing this. So, as Dor mentioned, in this particular case, the 8 cores of RAM are in the upper top right, and then of course it's funny because there's down in the bottom right you have all the programs that are currently running. It's of course a lot like top in the ways that when you want to kill one of those processes, should you want to, you can actually do it from the menu there as well. This is a phenomenal tool.
It is. And then if you scroll a little bit further down, what you see is when you're in the interface and hit escape, you get an actual like interactive menu where you can go options, help, and quit. And in the options right there is also theming options. And it's very easy. I want to say it was actually like CSS type file where you can go customize your own options with your own font, your own color patterns and everything. This is the kind of thing where I fully expect to like be watching a interview with some business executive, and then in the background to see like a 60-inch TV hanging in his office with some kind of like monitoring going on, and it's going to end up being Bash Top in the background. This is the kind of tool I can honestly see a huge swath of people, once they discover, customizing to meet their needs and then showing it off. And yes, it is a lot like Top or H-Top, but in my humble opinion, in my personal narrow point of view, this makes H-Top look
like garbage.
Well, like it has a eating disorder kind of thing, where this is like rich, this is full, this is to me damn amazing. And I love the fact that I can literally install it on a Pi device. I can SSH into it and I can run this, and I can see really feature rich stats in real time, and I can see what's taking up resources, what's slowing down the device. This is one of my favorite things I've installed in the last like 5 or 6 months. Again, BASHTOP. Just Google search it and it's installable on everything that's ever existed.
And from my understanding, just a little bit of background is the man who developed this apparently has always wanted to get to this, but he says his own laziness has done him in. Well, that's 3,000 lines of bash code right there.
And it results in something glorious. I have no problem in saying that. And I think he picked a really good name, Bash Top. It conveys exactly what it is because people know in the Linux world, the nerds know what top means. Top means you're going to see what's happening, your disk IO, your load, your network stack, and everything. And then Bash Top just means it's a tight interface that will be compatible with Bash. This is one of the best things I've found, literally, I feel, in years.
I think the irony here is that the page looks a lot more antiquated as opposed to the actual application.
Well, I will say it is difficult for an application like that to properly do justification to a project. And they try, but, they need a specialist to come on who understands web UX design and give them a domain and a page to where they can actually properly display what's going on with this.
Well, again, I think if there's ever an Achilles heel for Linux, it's actually been design. I'm hoping that maybe in the upcoming years, that will be the next thing that people focus on, because we really don't have any excuse to say we don't have the tools. We absolutely have the tools. We just have people that are more tech inclined versus artistically inclined.
Yeah, I'll say, especially with all this Corona stuff, we have been educated that there is plenty of talent, plenty of people to go around to do all this kind of thing and get this kind of stuff done.
Quite frankly, I think we're at a period now where we may see a lot of, well, let's put it this way. I would say that in the next month or so, we're going to see a lot of good things like, music, art, a lot of writing. I mean, a lot of personal projects are actually going to start coming to the top because we've had this time at home to work on these things. And, it's funny, despite the fact that, if you stop and do a little bit of personal inventory, you'll realize you've probably done more than you actually think, because a lot of folks say that they've been home now for the last couple of months. I haven't done anything. Yeah, I thought the same thing until I realized the other day, no, I've actually done quite a bit over this time. So, yeah, let's keep an eye on both YouTube and all our other sites, because we're going to see an explosion of this kind of stuff.
Absolutely agree. The next link I wanted to bring up, and this is the kind of example of the stuff that I wish I had the time to devote to actually using the application. But I'm not even going to pretend to lie. I have not. Command line to do note-taking task kind of solutions are the kind of thing I really do wish more people would utilize. This was an example of one. This was called STUP, which I take as standard up. Daily notes in the terminal. STUP. If you check it out, you basically run the basic command of STUP, hit enter, and it gives you a bunch of different options on what you can do. Amongst the it is to display the current notes, display things that are outstanding, display things per day, add things, add tags, add notes. This to me seemed like unbelievably full-featured and flexible.
I don't even know where to begin with this because, I'm not sure whether or not I'd actually have a chance to use such a thing.
In 1 second, Bruce, I was hearing doubles kind of thing. We had our Jitsi experience go a little bit of boom, but I think we're good now. Okay. Yeah, to me, this is the kind of thing where if I would have had available to me when I was like 18 years old, I could have found a damn good use case for it, but I'm now so set in my ways, I don't know if I can.
All right, and now we're back.
It looks like you might have dropped out of Mumble, Bruce. Maybe? No, you're there. Never mind.
So yeah, I don't have much to add, so I'll remain silent.
Well, I'll just say if you're out there looking for a command line driven notes application, STUP, I definitely encourage you to check it out because this to me is one of the more powerful to do / notes things I've ever seen in my life. And with, I'll say this, the advent of the Pine phone and the Pine tab and a real actual full-blown Linux operating system on a tablet, this is the kind of tool I want available to me. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to use it, but I love having these things available.
Yeah, like anything else, you're only as good as the tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, and honestly, half the reason I bring things to this show are just so I have them available to me in my history. If I was good at writing text, I would have a blog. I would have never started a podcast. The part of the reason I do a podcast is so I have these like historical notes that I can go back to looking at. Not only do I really wish I was better at note taking, not only do I wish I was better at doing to-do kind of things, one of my passions I wish I was actually competent at was graphic design. And we've had more than a couple really, really good options on the Linux desktop. One of them that is very successful on the Linux desktop is now making the jump to be a Android application, and it's Krita, Krita. For those that don't know, there's raster-based graphics, and I'm saying this slow so I don't mess it up. There are raster-based graphics, and then there is vector-based graphics. Raster-based graphics, the long and the short of it is, if you zoom in, they become blurry. Where vector-based graphic applications, you zoom in and they stay perfectly crisp and clean because one is a numbers-based thing and the other one is not. Krita, I believe, is a raster-based art manipulation tool, the opposite of Inkscape, but equally impressive, equally fully featured, and can really have somebody who has a talent to create art. This is the kind of tool that really I think they should use.
Well, and I'll get into trouble here, but I'll say it anyway. If you draw comics for a living, this is the perfect tool for it because a lot of folks have created comics panels using this application. In fact, it's funny. This application is pretty old, I think, because I remember hearing about this for quite a few years now. I've been trying to get my brother to do it, but he's along the Inkscape side of things. So I can't. I'm obviously not going to have an argument with somebody who knows what they're doing, but just the same, Krita is. I love the fact that it's also currently actively developed as well. We talked about earlier about salaried people. A couple of the people that they have on salary right now are getting roughly $3,000 American dollars a month to do the development on this. Think about that for a minute.
What the hell am I doing?
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'll put it like this. There's GIMP, there's Krita, there's Inkscape. The three, to me, focus on very niche or niche needs. GIMP, I take of as being real-world photography manipulation. Inkscape is great for stuff like logo design, and for something like completely not real in the real world at all. Krita, to me, like you said, it's great for those kind of like storyboarding, where you're trying to blend the real world into uh, a very graphics heavy manipulation area. And yes, Krita, I think has honestly, I don't want to say it's among the first KDE projects, but it begins with the letter K. And in Linux, when something begins with the letter K, you can be rest assured it has something to do with KDE. But I'm pretty sure this is among one of the early KDE based applications. And I'll say it like this: I've warmed up a lot on KDE in the last 6 months, 5 to 6 months. Partially because of my Pinebook Pro. I'm shocked at how well KDE Plasma runs on it. But this is the kind of application I want to introduce to my son, and I've been giving him credit now when he does things like learning Spanish. I've been telling his teachers about it, documenting it very crisp and cleanly to make sure that he gets credit. And I did introduce this to him. He has a small 8-inch tablet, and I said, look, if you do artwork in here, I will submit it to your school for your art class, so hopefully you can get credit for that as well. And I spoke to his teacher, and she said, give me anything you want, it will count towards his grade.
Oh, nicely done.
I'm not above bribing my children. I will give them Nintendo Switches. I will give them VR headsets. I will give them burgers and fries and chicken nuggets. And I will give them good grades if all they do is better themselves in any shape, way, or form. That's all I ever ask. And I know if I had the open opportunities as a kid where I was encouraged to be more expressive with art kinds of things, I do think now in my life I would be much better at them. So that's why I keep like pushing my kids towards this kind of thing.
Well, I think for me, it would have been interesting to have access to these kind of tools because, at this point, is it too late to teach an old dog new tricks? Not as much as it used to be, especially now if you hope to survive in the field that you're running. But again, to your point, KDE is really a desktop at some point that I'm going to have to relook at because there was an article. Actually, a Phoronix article earlier where they competed against the XFCE desktop, and they surprisingly crushed XFCE. So that's saying a lot. That shows you how much the design has gone in, and this is one of the few projects where I can say the passion truly exists with the people over in KDE. And yes, you're correct. In regards to Krita, I believe that all the board members are from KDE.
Yeah, and I will say, it's one of those like they're meeting in the middle. It isn't that KDE is becoming insanely more efficient. They are becoming more efficient. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the drivers on the graphics are becoming insanely more optimized, where KDE is what's called a composited desktop, which means it requires 3D compositing. Okay. The 3D compositing has gotten so tight on the back end that it's gotten better. At the same token, the KDE development, the KWin manager has gotten much better to where they are starting to see dramatic improvements in how they're performing. XFCE, I will say it seems to be that their development has lost momentum. I'm still a fan of XFCE, not as much as Awesome or i3, but I do think they have a really good thing going. I do think they need a little bit more momentum in order to get things to run right again. But KDE, after the debacle, after the complete, absolute debauchery when they went to version 4, they have made insane progress since then.
Nope, agreed. And I think, if anything, one of the great parts about it is that the last couple of times where it was accidentally installed, when I wasn't paying attention, it wasn't terrible. I mean, especially now, I figure with the hardware that I have is much better and able to handle such things. I don't know about you, but I'm sure you'll agree that hardware is not as much of an obstacle as it used to be for Linux. In fact, it seems quite the opposite. And now that Linus is moving over to Ryzen as his chip development. Why don't we see where it goes from there?
That blew my mind. And that is hopefully a link we get to. But Linus, after, I want to say 20 years, said he's done with Intel and he's moving over to AMD and NVIDIA based products because they've been doing more progress, which blew my mind. I didn't expect that, but I will say I've had more than a couple of people insist to me that in the last year and a half to 2 years, their AMD systems have went dramatically down in price, yet performance-wise on Windows and Linux, they're seeing significant improvements.
Oh, I'm not surprised. So the tinfoil hat segment of the show is this. Um, let's look down the road. Do you think ultimately Linus throws the towel in and says, "All right, Microsoft, you pay me X amount of dollars. The code is yours."
Bruce, okay. I'll just put it like this. Microsoft is doing more in Linux type ecosystems in the last 30, 90, 180 days than I've seen the level of advancements in Linux itself. Linus likes progress. Linus likes being around movers and shakers. Microsoft released a package management system, a command line driven package management system called Winget. Windows released the Windows Terminal 1.0, which is a lot like Bash. Windows insisted that the Windows subsystem for Linux, which is named completely backwards, which is where you can install a Linux kernel on a Windows operating system, version 2.0, they're going to fully officially support graphical environments, which means you'll be able to load a Windows 10 desktop or server and then install the Windows subsystem for Linux, which is again named completely wrong, and then install basically anything you can install on Linux. So then the question would be, in business and enterprise, if you already have a Windows server or a Windows desktop sitting around, why would you install Linux natively when you can just install this subsystem, which probably be pretty easy to back up and restore in my experience? I can see Microsoft making it rain with money to people to say, why don't you come over to us? Linus isn't special. To quote Ted DiBiase from around 1984, professional American wrestling, everybody has their price. And there's no doubt if you point enough money at Linus Torvalds, he will do basically anything you ask him to do.
Well, and at this point, you're also looking at the Linux kernel, which is millions of lines of code. And at one point, you're going to come to a certain age saying, why am I doing this? And, at this point, I mean, granted, I think we all agree that the war is essentially over at this point. The next generation, we're kind of at the cusp right now to see all the younger folks coming in, discovering this stuff and seeing where they take it to the next level. Because the thing is that now, if something actually happened to Torvalds, you do have, a strong core of folk who are willing to actually assist on it. Let's see, Greg Kroll Hartman, I believe, is one of the big ones. The person who does the editing for LWN.net, the news site there, Corbin, is it? So there's some people there, but again, I am really kind of curious about where the future is, and I don't know. I just see a change coming because there will be enough money in that pot.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't. I've learned in life, I cannot sit back as a bystander, as an armchair quarterback, and claim that I know what's the right choice to be made, and then to criticize somebody when they make a choice other than what I perceive as being the optimal choice. What I will say is this: what I hope happens is that Linux continuously poisons. Oh, I like that word a lot. Poisons every branch, every arm, every level at Microsoft from the inside, because it's been painfully obvious. For Windows to release a command line driven package management system means somebody at Windows at Microsoft who said, I have a really easy time performing updates and upgrades and distribution upgrades and cleaning up my system from a command line. Instead of like trying to do everything in this clumsy ass interface called Windows, how about we create something called WinGet, which is like 1 degree away from AppGet, but let's call it WinGet. WINGET, and let's just do this and move forward. And then executives at Microsoft were so pleased by it, they said move forward. So I'm happy that Linux is what the executives said a decade ago, poisoning Microsoft, because what one person's poison is another person's like honey or agave or whatever. So I want more Linux people to get jobs at Microsoft, because not only do they have their price, but at the same token, Microsoft's ethics and morals are being compromised. What they believed, no longer they believe, because everybody else around them is changing their mind. Everybody working around them is now saying, this Linux thing, it seems to work pretty good. Maybe we could use it a little bit. And executives are agreeing because they have no choice. I'm happy that's happening. I don't know if I'm going to be happy with the end result, but I'm just happy that companies are willing to change.
Well, one of the things that you sort of hit on too was the command line in Windows. The funny thing is that I remember many years ago somebody had said there was a project I had to do, and they said, "Well, just SSH in, and you'll be able to take care of that." At the time, the person didn't realize I was on a Windows machine, but at the time, and this is many years ago, I didn't realize that. Yeah, just because you open up a terminal in Windows doesn't mean that SSH comes with it at all. I can't tell you what a relief it'll be on the day you can open up a command line on Windows and actually do an SSH session.
It's already happened, Bruce. I guess you didn't notice.
Exactly.
You can open up PowerShell and you can invoke SCP commands. And it's been like that for I want to say almost a year. And I didn't know about it until 2 weeks ago. I ain't gonna lie.
Now, the funny thing about Windows and PowerShell and Linux is simply this: it's still largely unusable, for me at least, because it doesn't access Active Directory. It doesn't access things that you'd actually have to use PowerShell for on a Linux system. So that still has a little ways to go.
It does. I will say it's one of those things. It's it's going to meet in the middle. They're working from opposite sides of the spectrum. I don't know when they're going to meet, but I assure you they will meet, and it's going to be one of those things. No one's going to see it happening until it happened, kind of thing. There is another link that I honestly insist that we have to bring, and it's because I am infatuated Bruce, I'm sorry for saying it like that, but I am literally infatuated with tools that make it easy for novice people to do extremely, as far as I'm concerned, extremely advanced things. There are people out there that like Nextcloud. There are people out there that like rsync. There are people out there that like these synchronization tools that are out there. This was one that caught my eye, and it's only because the amount of information available in the graphical user interface was absolutely insane. This was called Free File Sync, all one word. This is complete GPL3 product. Okay, so everything is in the clear, and you can copy it and you can do whatever you want with it. And if you just go to freefilesync.org and click on screenshots, if you just go through the screenshots, what you'll see is this is the exception of the rule in the graphical application interface. And what I mean is this is one of the few graphical applications that really does surface every single option available to a command line user through this graphical interface, because we've seen rsync in the past, and with rsync the graphical tools rarely have all the options available to them, where this has every option available to them.
Actually, I'll have to take a look at that, because there are a couple of things. I had a couple of folder moves, and like anything else, when you compare the folder from beginning to end, sometimes some files don't make it over for whatever reason, and you want to be able to keep track of such a thing. So,
right. Give me 1 second, Bruce.
Yep.
Sorry about that, Bruce. I thought I heard a kid.
Yeah, nope, not at all.
But yeah, if you take a look at the screenshots on this free file sync, one of the first things that caught my eye was you literally had the ability to compare. And one of my favorite applications from years ago was called GRSync, which was a graphical interface for rsync. rsync is the tool that any competent backup or copying thing uses on its back end. And with GRSync, you could run what was called basically like a test, to where it would pretend to run your synchronization and then tell you what happened during it. It would tell you if it deleted files, moved files, copied files, created files, or updated files. This compare thing does the exact same kind of thing. If you're at all familiar with doing a diff in the Linux world, when you do a compare in this graphical interface, it literally is like a diff. It shows you the difference on a file level, what is different. And I'll just put it like this. There are certain things in the Linux world I don't want to have to drop to a command line and remember commands and type commands when it's a one-off kind of situation. Now, granted, if I want to create a routine that runs every X number of minutes perfectly silently in the background, I'm going to use rsync. But when I need to like set up something for the first time and make sure I'm doing it right, looking at this free file sync, I am blown away. I have no problem in saying it out loud again. I am literally blown away at how competent this damn tool looks.
No, it's interesting too because one of the things I realize how much of a pedestrian user I am of Linux sometimes because very rarely do I get in a situation where I'm moving anything at all. I mean, over the years I've learned to play without a net, but for something like this is actually something that hits me close to home because uh, while for personal use I'm probably not going to use such a thing. Actually, in an enterprise use, I could totally use something like this.
Yeah, and the only thing I didn't get a chance to see is after running my compare, after running these things, can I get what it's running exported to a command line command? Because if I can do that, then this literally solves every kind of solution I need. And I will say it like this: this also can connect to services and servers using SFTP, FTP, and even things like Google Drive. This is the kind of tool I almost want to skip a show or two just so I have more time to play with these kinds of tools, but I'm also addicted to doing shows, so we're doing a show.
Fair enough. And me, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, I will say there were more than a couple links in the show. I will make sure that the Windows terminal, the Windows package manager, will be in the notes. And one of the links that is in there, we've, and I don't mean we as in me, and I don't mean we as in you, Bruce. I mean we as in the greater people in the Linux ecosystem have not been able to shut up for a decade about when is it going to be the year of the Linux desktop. And I have good news and bad news for all of them little whiny people out there. The good news is we're going to have the year of the Linux desktop any day now. The bad news is it's not going to be Linux as you know it. It's literally going to be the Windows subsystem for Linux. There's an article here, and I want to say it was by the Honorable Stephen J. Von Nichols, who I consider to be still one of the best writers for any content I've ever witnessed in my life. And he goes on to say that he believes 2020 will be the year of the Linux on the Windows desktop, where you're going to see development, you're going to see administration, and you're going to see people doing deployment type things on a Windows desktop, but utilizing the Linux subsystem like an insane amount of time. And I will put it like this: administrators, developers, people who do deployments, executives, administrators, all of them, they have one thing in common, and that is that they're lazy as hell. I say that, and I'm one of them people. Lazy as hell. We will do whatever requires the least amount of work. And I do believe the DevOps ecosystem is 10 times more matured on the Linux desktop. So I can see Windows administrators accessing Linux applications and workflows to get things in air quotes done. I'm never going to say Stephen J. Von Nichols is wrong. I will say I will question his judgment from time to time, but I ain't going to lie. I think he actually might be right on this.
No, I tend to agree with you. Usually, if there's any article written about Linux, period, he's actually my go-to person because over the years we've seen some really ridiculous stuff in various Linux rags and stuff like that. And when the day is done, I'm glad to see that he's still there writing up articles. One of the things that we talked about a little while ago in regards to Microsoft applications is that I believe that a lot of them are made not necessarily for the lazy administrator, but you literally could grab somebody off the street and say, here's what you're doing today. Press this button, and this button. And then they just go on their way. I mean, it's, there's a freaking dashboard for everything, and it's, it's funny because everything has a UI and it's not necessarily the greatest. In fact, if anything, it's probably resource intensive, but everything is a graphical design. And, it's funny with PowerShell, I've always been very curious on how well that's being used. But, it's gotten to the point where they're building items for the front end that, oddly enough, send PowerShell commands to the OS. So anyway, that's what we got.
Yeah, in my limited experience, and I hope people understand when I say that kind of thing. I am earnest when I say that. In my extremely limited experience, PowerShell is continuously gaining popularity, continuously gaining user base. But where I'm at in government, everything is always years behind, even when we are like 3 times more advanced than our sister and our parent administration. We're still 3 to 5 years behind. But I see where PowerShell can help those people get things done. They just don't know it yet, or they're still too comfortable with clicking in a graphical interface.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, they're just not comfortable enough yet with automating script type things.
Well, I guess what really concerns me the most is that you're right, it is gaining in popularity. You know what? One of the largest groups it's gaining popularity in are the less than above board hackers, because they've totally embraced PowerShell to crack machines and get into what they need to. Because that's one thing I think. I'm not really sure where to go with this, because on one hand, Microsoft is trying to make it easier for the administrators to do their job. But in doing so, you're opening another window to another part that you didn't think of, because security is on their minds, but not quite there yet. And so they leave lots of doors open. And, it's funny because one article that I wish I had actually discussed the issue of iOS. Apparently, the government was asked, "Do you need these round of hacks?" And then the guy goes, "Nope, we've got all we need." So, as much as you think certain things are secure, security is really out the window at this point.
Yes, security is a complete illusion. Another link I wanted to bring up, only because I wanted to ask you, Bruce, if when you click this link, it's to ghacks.net, which I will say, it's one of the websites I subscribe to their RSS feed. It's one of the sites that typically when I find a good topic, I go find somebody else talking about the topic and I put their link in the notes. Only because I don't want to seem to favor any one site more than another. With that stated, the article is Brave launches Brave Together video calling in the latest nightly version of the Brave browser. Long story short, everything is based off of Chromium except Firefox. Let's just go there. Microsoft Edge is Chromium. Chromium is Chromium. Chrome is Chromium. Vivaldi is Chromium. Brave is Chromium. They're all Chromium. Okay. Some people have some issues with Vivaldi. Some people have some issues with Brave. And then you have people who just use Firefox. Okay. Perfection is unobtainable. Let's go there. Okay. Brave is trying to do what they perceive as being right by blocking ads and giving money back to other people. They're doing their own thing. And to be honest, I think they're doing a really good job. I have every browser installed because that's me. They're not my main browser. They will never be my main browser. Firefox is because Firefox is. But if you take a look at this link, Brave launches Brave Together, and you scroll down, I'll just say it like this. It looks a hell of a lot like they're using Jitsi on the back end to put together this video conferencing solution built into, in air quotes, Brave. And I'm okay with that because no good solution was developed on an island by itself. They all stand on the shoulders of giants before them. And Jitsi, in my humble opinion, is the kind of solution anybody else can download the server, put it up themselves, and call it their own. They need to do a little bit more in the realm of customizing to make it a little bit less obvious that they're using Jitsi. But I'll say if you enjoy the Brave browser, expect in the next 2 to 3 months that you're going to have a new feature called Brave Together. And what it's going to be is a Jitsi based video conferencing solution that will be, in my humble opinion, more stable, more consistent than a lot of other solutions out there.
Well, I like some of the things that I've already seen from this, and you're right. Brave will never be my primary go-to browser. In fact, right now I'm even using WaterFox. Never mind Firefox. But yeah, I actually have to give this a rundown because one of the things that's been going for the last couple of weeks, my brothers and I have been video conferencing, and we started off with Zoom. We did Google Hangouts. That was a miserable failure. I should give Jitsi a try with them and then move on and see what happens with this because, listen, time is all we've got now.
Yeah, and I will say simplicity and convenience will always trump everything else. And I'm sorry if I just triggered a bunch of people out there, but simplicity and convenience are the things that we humans value the most. Jitsi, in my humble opinion, are really, really close with getting that. I don't want to say perfect because perfect is unobtainable, but if you use it on Android, it is one of the things that just works. If you use it on the desktop, you just have to have a touch of patience, read what prompts you when you first access it, and then it is very easy to use. If you click the wrong thing on the desktop or laptop, then it becomes a very painful thing to use.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, and I'm all for competitive browsers to try to, take on other people. Firefox has proven itself to me that their primary goal is individual end users, freedom, and privacy. And because of that, I now have switched up my Patreon support. I've dropped a couple of things that I gave money to, and I've now started to give a monthly donation to Mozilla because if Mozilla as a corporation, as a company, as an entity, as a software development thing goes away, I think we humans will suffer somewhat in the next coming months or years.
Oh, and let's make no mistake about it. Google's old proverb, which was "do no evil," is long gone. So it doesn't mean that they're actively doing it, but it's not a priority anymore. And I get it; they're a big, growing behemoth. But I do enjoy checking out new browsers as they come along. I mean, whether it's Opera, Vivaldi, I mean, something along those lines. But when the day is done, you're right; they're all using the same, WebKit, Chromium infrastructure. So anyway, for me, it's Firefox, and oddly enough, Quant.
Quant works, I don't want to say gloriously, but it damn well works. On Firefox, one plugin that I don't know if you're aware of, and I'll share it in the notes. I'll do my best sharing the notes. It's literally called Neat, NEATURL. This is the plugin that I've been begging for like 5 years now, to where you click a link, and now being a web guy, I know there's the domain, then there's the path, then there's the target, then there's a question mark, and then there's garbage after that question mark. That garbage is what enables people to track you, enables people to reference where you came from. It also changes stuff like your Amazon affiliate link. So everything after the question mark, I want deleted every time I click. I don't want any of that crap to move forward. This plugin on Firefox called Neat URL, basically anytime you click anything, deletes everything after the .html or the .aspx or the .asp or the .jhtml, because after that, it is totally unnecessary for the page to work, is the way that I'll put it. That was one of the most best links I found in the last 30, 60 days. I do use Quant as my default search engine. Every once a day, every 30 to 50 searches, I have to go to another search engine because Quant doesn't give me the options I need. Like in Google, I like the fact that I can say only show me results for the last 24 hours. When I'm looking for something hyper focused, like something that happened in Minneapolis, Kentucky, Chicago, or Baltimore, and I want the most up-to-date information on the kind of things. But everything else, Quant is doing a damn fine job. And I'll say it like this, Bruce. I was shocked. I literally almost told my wife last week, we need to pull over, because I saw a billboard on the side of the road for DuckDuckGo. And I thought to myself, holy crap, DuckDuckGo has enough money, they can afford a billboard. Good for them.
Well, they also can afford on-air advertising, because if you listen to Bloomberg Radio, I was shocked the other day when they were talking about DuckDuckGo. It's like, wow, good for them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I do believe that DuckDuckGo has individuals' liberties as a actual goal in their business ecosystem. So I'm okay with supporting them. I have them installed on my mobile device, and they are my primary search engine on that. But on desktop, Quant seems to be doing fantastic.
Well, and so for me, here's where it divides out. Now, because we're in tech, you usually, Google, Microsoft has broken this. Well, here's the error code. You can usually find those pretty quickly. But over time, like I said, I've merged over to Quant. And Quant does a lot of things well when you're looking for something that are more, let's just say, not as tech intensive. It still gives you maybe one or two. The top two answers are usually in the realm of what you're looking for. Once you get beyond the fifth or sixth, it gets a little hazy. But, Quant will be my go-to for now, but if I need anything that's intensive or tech, I have to admit I do fall back on Google for that. DuckDuckGo is something you're pulling for, and you hope that it does it, but for me, it just never quite gets there. I'll always root for them, but until the algorithm is stepped up a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, when I use it, I always end up scrolling more than I want to, and that's the nicest way I can put it. It's one of those things. They have the best of intentions, and they really are doing a good job, but that doesn't mean they're going to give great results.
Nope, absolutely. You're correct.
Okay, there again will be links in the notes to everything that we could have possibly talked about, including an actual breakdown of the Linus Torvalds build of his recent computer, to which I'm happy I wasn't the only one. I shared that, and two people I know who own computer shops, this is what they do. They said, why in the hell does he need an 850 watt power supply? You know why? Because Linus Torvalds doesn't know hardware. This is a perfect example of, he's a software guy, he's a kernel guy, he does not understand anything about hardware. And Linus, if you listen to this, sorry, but it's true. You don't need an 850 watt power supply unless you have an NVIDIA graphics card in your thing, and you don't. You're using onboard graphics. Why? Because you're typing ASCII characters. You're a nerd. You don't need an 850 watt power supply. You could have saved $40 by getting a cheaper one, but you don't know what you're doing, and it's painfully obvious you're a little bit like RMS there, Mr. Torvalds. And you didn't ask somebody for their expert opinion, but instead you assumed you knew such. So, you paid too much money, and you know who thanks you? The Federal Reserve thanks you, Donald Trump thanks you, and the U.S. economy thanks you for spending too much money. Sir, good job.
Well, how do you know he's not playing an Xbox game in one of the VMs?
Because his video card won't support it. It's onboard graphics. Unless he's lying to everyone and he actually has an NVIDIA graphics card plugged into that thing, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a clue on how to actually install computer games. Because of all the times that we've heard him talk about things, he never said, I really enjoyed that latest Halo game, or he never said Crysis was a great game. He just gave companies the middle finger, That's about it.
All right, well, I guess we'll run with that.
Okay, were there any other things you wanted to bring up and talk about, Bruce?
No, actually, we covered a great deal of it, so I'm pretty happy with it.
Well, I'm going to ask you blatantly, what other ways can people keep up with you, contact you, and listen to things that you're doing?
You know what? This show is perfect for everything that needs to happen. It's one of those things where I've got to step up our presence on Facebook, but we'll get there.
I'm not worried about that presence. I'm worried about you and Jonathan doing content, and I'm worried about the Distro Watch podcast, because I have no problem in saying it like this. I love the fact that every time I listen to Distro Watch podcast, I know exactly what I'm going to hear. I'm going to hear topics and articles that are prevalent to what is recent news in Linux, and I'm going to hear about new distributions that are making their graduation ceremony kind of thing, and I'm going to hear about significant updates and upgrades to distributions. And I thank you, and I thank everybody at Distro Watch, and I monetarily have thanked them many times in the past for continuing to do such a thing, because without that, I'm going to have to rely on totally incompetent, independent podcasters, and I don't want to. I'd rather listen to a trusted source like Distro Watch.
Well, thank you, but that all goes to Jesse, who is actually the big workhorse over there. In regards to Jonathan, I need to get back in touch with him and see what is going on, because I also know that at some point you were also thinking about having the triumvirate, all three of us. That could be phenomenal.
Oh, I'm definitely game for that. And I'll put it like this: anybody out there who likes enjoying communicating, talking, chatting about Linux and doesn't believe that they know everything, don't hesitate to contact us, podcast at linuxfortherestofus.com. In the notes, we have Discord links, we have Twitter links, we have other links. But if you try to contact me and proclaim that you know everything, you will quickly be debunked. You will quickly be set aside. You will quickly be thrown in the garbage, because that's where you belong. Nobody knows everything. Humans are completely fallible. We are pattern recognition machines. We believe when we see something, it's the fact. We're wrong. We're idiots. You don't believe me? Walk out your front door and talk to the random person, and you'll see. Everybody is. Again, podcast at linuxfortherestofus.com or 7076podnut, or you can join us on Discord, or you can send me or Bruce an email privately. Bruce many times has stated, and a couple times incorrectly stated, his blog on Distro Watch podcast, but he then corrects himself. So you can contact any of us directly, or contact any of our community members directly, because there is one honest to God truth. We actually answer people on email. I've had more than a couple emails in the last 30 days where people say, wow, you answered me. That's rare. I also have had people that say, wow, you actually seem to care. That's rare. And I've also had people that say, you are honest with people. You don't try to be dishonest. You don't have some political motive. You don't have some monetarily motive. I'm not going to tell you why you have to go check out ExpressVPN or some other company, because we're not bought off by other people. Linux is for the masses. It's not for the enterprises. It's not for the elitist. It's not for the graybeards. Linux is for everybody. Do you have any parting words there, Bruce?
I do not, but I want to thank everybody for listening and for the folks who write in. We really appreciate it.
And I'll say I appreciate everybody on May the 30th, 2020, who had any part in that SpaceX launch today. That was friggin' glorious and amazing. And I forced both my kids to turn off their YouTube for 5 minutes and watch this friggin' launch, because I do believe that was a historical event, and it would not have been able to happen if immigration did not allow certain people to come through and fight for their right to push this country forward. That was, to me, one of the most glorious things I've seen like the last 15 years. And it's the kind of thing that makes me want to sit down and talk to people smarter than me, like Bruce Patterson. Thank you, Bruce.
Oh, thank you, Dor.
And I'll beg everyone, do not forget, Linux is not for everybody else, but it is, again, for the rest of us. And if you do not have root, you really, really do not know who does. Thank you, Bruce.
And here.
YouTube is always at least like 30 to 40 seconds behind. It's always back. No, I literally have to run up the stairs for 5 seconds because I swear I heard a kid again.
All right. I'm going to grab something to drink myself. Be right back.
Okay. That wasn't good. I don't like that. Okay. Oh. Well, we had at least 4 people watching, and not a single person clicked like. I never want to be the person who asks people to click like, so I'm not. Because I hate those people. I hate those people that say, oh, click that subscribe, click that bell, and click like. Those people drive me nuts. So, I think my color was off. So, see if I can make my color better. Huh. I don't know how that happened. Let me click this again. Okay, so why is it they look so different? That's amazing. Wow, I'm really confused. Huh. Wild, weird, wild stuff. Wow, man, my shoulders are killing me. I got no problem saying I am really good with dealing with pain, but wow, this last like 2 months has been something really bad. TCL10L. A little bit expensive there. You know, I'm cheap too. So unmute that tab and unmute that tab. Oof. Wow. Oh. Oh my goodness. Wow.
All right, let me send that file over to you.
Cool. And we are still streaming, Bruce, just to let you know.
Yep, good.
Oh man. Wow. Oh. See, to me that was a good length. Wasn't too long. And I'll say, if I ever get anybody to email me again telling me that they think the show is going too long, I'm going to ask them for their personal home address, just so if I'm ever in their neighborhood, I can punch them right in their genitalia. Because you got like, you heard about the Joe Rogan deal, right?
I did. I was surprised that he went over to Spotify.
For millions of dollars. The average length of his last 100 episodes are 3 hours.
Well, that's the thing. I like his style and everything, but not 3 hours long.
Crap. Hold on, let me see this. I gotta go check out the wife real quick. Let me go up and see if my son's there. I'll be right back, Bruce.
All right.
Oh. Sorry about that, Bruce. Okay, I'm back.
Yep. All right. I just wanted to see if you could actually hear me without my hitting the control button, but apparently you can't.
No, I have my web browser tab muted. So I can't hear you and the stream can't hear you.
No, all right. That's perfect.
Two real quickies. She needed me to turn off the lights because she did her nails. And I wanted to share with you because only a few people I know of can actually recognize this and respect this, is what I'm going to say. Every time, okay, a long time listener who was honestly involved with Linux Basics. You remember Jonas?
Oh, vaguely.
Yeah. He came on a little bit late. He was from Hawaii, so he was
Oh,
always
yes. Yep.
yeah. So he was always like time shifted kind of thing. He sent me this in the mail a couple months ago, and I ain't gonna lie, Bruce. He didn't tell me it was coming, and when I opened it up, I just like was in tears for a while. So I have this sitting down here. So every time I walk down here, this is what I see before I come down to my desk, and it is an actual Life magazine, like the entire magazine, and it's Johnny Carson cover from January 1970, January 23rd, 1970. Glorious. Johnny Carson, the lonesome hero of middle America. In my opinion, nobody exuded class when I was a kid watching TV like Johnny friggin' Carson. He was nice to the people he was supposed to be nice to. He was flirtatious with the people he should have been flirtatious with. He was stern and serious with the people he should have been stern and serious with. But he was always at the end of the show the nicest guy, like I remember watching.
Well, it's funny because there was actually, if you look at the old YouTube videos, there's actually Drew Carey making his debut. And it was funny because, Carey was so respectful of Carson because he knew what he was doing with. But, it's funny because Carson fed that back to him as well, and he's responsible for setting the careers of so many people.
Of making or breaking. There's two podcasts I listen to. One is new, and it's literally called the Johnny Carson Show Official Podcast. Between you and me, Johnny Carson, when he died, donated something like $300 million to skeptical and to atheist type organizations because he said nobody's giving them enough money. One of the things he put over $250 million into was the Johnny Carson Foundation. People who own everything that he did and who will do only what he perceived as being the right thing. So there's the Johnny Carson Show podcast, which is by the Carson Entertainment Group, where each episode is, oh God, Bruce, I get tingly, where each episode is like the monologue from a random show, and then one or two of the guests, they just play it in real time. And it is fantastic. The other one is called, I want to say, the Carson Podcast, which is a fan-driven podcast where all he does is he goes and interviews people involved with it. Yeah, it's called the Carson Podcast. And this guy used to work for Johnny Carson, and then he works for David Letterman. The Carson Podcast, he goes and interviews people around Johnny Carson about what did Johnny Carson mean to you? What did the show mean to you? When you went on the show, how did it change your career, kind of thing? And it's just that. And it's like one of the biggest beneficiaries besides Drew Carey to their career, besides Louis Anderson to their career, was, oh God, the extremely dry Stephen
Wright.
Stephen Wright. And Stephen Wright says, look, Johnny Carson changed my life 2 separate times. The first time I was on his show, took off like a rocket afterwards, but then I squandered it. I screwed it all up and I went downhill. And then like 6 years later, Carson had me on again. And again, after I performed, he asked me to come sit down. He asked nobody to sit down. He asked me to sit down. He said, again, my career took off. And then I realized, let's not mess this up. Okay. I was given a gift by a great man. Let's not mess it up completely. So yeah, both of those 2 podcasts, the actual Carson show clips are the only thing I listen to at close to normal speed now, because comedy requires timing. You know what I mean?
Oh, without a doubt. In fact, it's funny. One of the things I've been watching a lot of, those old Hollywood roasts.
Oh my God. The old Dean Martin and their old Friars roast are some of the best things that have ever existed, because they didn't care about feelings.
Oh no, not or anything else. And my favorite is with Foster Brooks, the guy who pretended to be drunk.
Yes. Oh, I believe he was drunk. I thought for like 20 years he was drunk.
There's one part where he's being introduced by Dean Martin, and so as Martin goes to sit down, what is it? He goes, yeah, the Mexican is right.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, and let's not go down Don Rickles.
Old comedy to me is so much better, and honestly, that's why, like, I force my oldest son, like, literally, I don't know if I told you this, Bruce. My oldest son is now 15 years old. Every week, me or my wife sit down with him and we force him to watch something. Every time it's my turn, it's something like Mel Brooks that comes up, because that's what comedy was. It was glorious, where he offended everybody because he could.
Well, it's funny that's really funny you picked Mel Brooks, because last night I saw an interview with him and Conan O'Brien. And, they were talking about some of the things, Sid Caesar was one of the guys they were going over. And, again, one of the other things about how he regrets he doesn't have the ability to pick up the phone and call Gene Wilder anymore.
Well, Gene Wilder, in my opinion, was one of the most talented actors for like a 20-year time span, because his comedic timing, he had no problem with just sitting there for 3 seconds and just staring at the camera to let it build before he would do what he did. Because I've had him watch at least 3 Gene Wilder comedy movies. And every time my son is just won't stop laughing, to where he then on his own watches it again a couple of days later, because he knows he missed so much stuff because he couldn't stop laughing. Gene Wilder, and I've seen a couple interviews now with Gene Wilder, he was such a bitter fella. Oh, well, he believed Hollywood was disgusting, and Hollywood was ruining what it meant to be a pure actor kind of thing. He did not like what was going on.
Oh, I'll actually have to grab the clip, because there's another one where Conan is actually interviewing Gene Wilder. And it's interesting because there was one part where they're talking about the only time that he had ever fought with or had an argument with the guy we were just talking about, Mel Brooks. It was during a scene in Frankenstein, where at one point, he says, Gene said, I'd always give the script to Mel to go over before we actually shot a scene. And so I gave him the script one day, and he looks at it, he goes, let me get this straight. You are going to dance with the monster to an Irving Berlin song. And he goes, and then we proceeded to get into this argument. And he goes, in about 20 minutes, he goes, I know my face is about to turn red, when he goes, okay. Go, why did you just put me through that? He goes, well, I figured one of two things. He goes, well, you fought about it so passionately, I figured it must be good. Because if you had just said, it's all right, then that would have been the end of it.
Well, and yeah, and that's the one thing I learned. Every time Gene Wilder argued about something, he was right. Even Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. When he was walking out of the door to the gate the first time in the movie, he argued that this needs to happen, where the cane got stuck and then he pratfalled and rolled. He argued with them for 3 days about it. He did 8 different versions of the shot, and only one of them was when he did the pratfall. And apparently, as soon as the pratfall was done, the director said, "Cut, or we're keeping that one." Because Gene was right.
There was a funny thing about that as well. He goes, he notices that it comes in waves of every 4 years that some parent has shown their kids this movie, because he'll walk down the street and the kid will instantly recognize who it is, but he's too afraid to say anything, but will just stare as he walks by.
Yeah, and I love that now, like meme culture has taken Gene Wilder's imagery from at least 2 movies that I've seen, and they've put great context around them to where it fits. Blazing Saddles is the kind of movie in 2020 you could not film and you could not release without being called a bigot, a racist, anti-Semite, and everything else under the face of the planet. Not to mention fart jokes. But let me tell you something. That is the kind of movie that I beg people to keep watching, because when we can make fun of it, it loses its power. And that was the one thing that Brooks said. Every time I make fun of something, my goal is to make it lose its power. And let me tell you something. Blazing Saddles made fun of every stereotype and every tripe and every trope that has ever existed.
Oh, it was phenomenal, especially with the stuff they tried to get away with the sheriff, especially when the point someone stood up and goes, wait a minute, he's and then the horn section comes in.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, we could use some comedy about now, I'll tell you that.
Well, that's why I haven't watched most anything that's been created for the last 10 years, Bruce. I have my Plex server where I have my friends involved, and once in a while I'll just dip into either James Burke Connections, Carl Sagan Cosmos, some old Mel Brooks History of the World Part 1, or Young Frankenstein, or whatever. Or one of the ones that caught me off guard that I forgot about was called Private Eyes. I don't know if you remember that. That was the old oh God, what was his name? Barney Fife, that guy.
Oh boy, yeah.
Yeah. That was an old movie from him from 1979, to where if you're able to stick through it, because it's much slower pace, because that's how it was back then. If you're able to stick through it, wow, some crazy talent. And the other thing I was able to watch that I forgot about was the old comedy series Soap. I watched the whole first season of that, and my God, if you're able to sit through it, the comedy is some of the best delete expletive I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, it was phenomenal. I remember when that was one of the few shows that we actually watched with the family.
Well, because it crossed boundaries. It was like All in the Family. It was like the Jeffersons, where any age bracket could watch it, and you would each pick up on the different things. And you each would think that you were in the in crowd, and you would each think that the other people didn't pick up on that. It was just comedy gold, the way that they put it.
Well, and let's face it, that's another show, All in the Family, well before its time. And the subjects that they took on, holy cow. I mean, they had to have been the first to address things like rape, race, different mixed roles within a couple, things like that,
Easily 20 years ahead of their time. But unfortunately, the last number I heard was 2 or 3 years ago. They presented the first season of All in the Family, and 2/3 of the episodes would not have gotten past the the FCC because they were too offensive, they were too opinionated, and they were too hard for people to stomach. I tell you right now, I don't agree with anybody's political opinion blanketly, including Carol O'Connor. But when it comes to acting ability, that man might have been amongst the best, most underappreciated actors I think I've seen in like 30 years. Him and Gene Stapleton were just, they worked off each other so well. And their pace. I watched that first season of All in the Family at least like 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years. Every time I know it's coming. And I still openly laugh out loud. It is that damn good.
Oh yeah, and then actually taking a step back, a couple of things. Of course, we're always used to the Three Stooges, and again, the Marx Brothers. If you rewatch some of their movies, the jokes come by so quick. You have to be careful because you'll get whiplash trying to keep track of all of them.
And yes, even though in 2020 we have quote unquote short attention spans, the Marx Brothers' pacing of comedy is unmatched. Nothing can keep up with how fast they deliver stuff. And I'll say it like this, Bruce. Anytime you want to sit down and do a podcast where all we talk about is All in the Family or the Marx Brothers, you just let me know, brother.
Oh, you know what? That might actually spawn off a really interesting show.
Dude, All in the Family. Let me tell you something. All in the Family is like it's like those mental invalids who talk about forgotten technology, which of course there's no such thing as forgotten technology, but there is such a thing as forgotten knowledge. And All in the Family spewed knowledge out from the boom tube in the 70s that I do believe people forgot about.
Oh, absolutely. You know, what's interesting is that Norman Lear also was responsible for a couple of other shows, and the Jeffersons, also another one.
God, so good. So good. And here's the thing. I do believe that shows like Good Times and the Jeffersons had to be better than average in order to succeed. Dramatic pause. The talent from the main actors in the Jeffersons and the main actors in Good Times were clearly, they were like overcast. The dad in Good Times was such a good actor.
Oh yeah.
Wheezy in the Jeffersons, she was obviously not working hard in that show because she was so much better than that character. and I love the fact, I want to say it might have been On the Family episode 1, it might have been episode 2. I'm sorry, I think it was episode 1. They introduced the Jeffersons kid in that episode because he was the genius, in air quotes, who could fix their TV upstairs. And he would always like talk down to him and give him money for fixing his television set. He was a electrical engineer kind of thing back in the day when those kinds of people weren't electronic engineers. And that's what I really did appreciate about both of the shows, The Jeffersons and All in the Family, was they took an unbelievably satirical look at everything. We're going to throw it in your face, and we're going to do everything in our power to make fun of it, even though nothing about this is funny.
Well, and it's interesting because if you want to take it even to a higher level, you wonder if it was like a utopian idea that he'd had, that you have an upscale family, that happens to be black at that time, and all of the things that they would encounter. So, because a lot of America at that time really wasn't. I don't know. There's been a lot of, there's still a lot of change left to be made, but yeah.
Ding ding. We will never achieve perfect harmony, perfect ecosystem, perfect government, perfect society. Change is the only inevitability. And that's what I liked about those shows was they never took too much for granted. They always assumed that you, the listener, and them were in a state of change kind of thing. And yeah. The one thing I loved, I remember about All in the Family when I was a kid, I would love when I would look at my mother and father and when they would be upset by something that happened in the show, but then literally 3 seconds later would uncontrollably laugh at the same show. They had the patience to persevere past things they didn't agree with, is the best way I can put it. And that's one of the things I truly believe that, we in 2020 we don't have the time. We don't have the patience to sit through stuff we don't agree with to then find the diamond in the rough.
Although it's interesting because then there was a show that had very liberal leanings, and that was MASH, and they were on for 10 years.
MASH was the kind of show that I truly believe changed people's political opinions because the writing and the acting and the drama in between the comedy was that damn good.
What I love too is that there was always a conflict that was always counterintuitive of what the answer should be.
Yes.
And again, it was one of those things where it really was interesting TV at the time.
Yeah, to me, MASH was the polar opposite, to Gilligan's Island. Because Gilligan's Island tackled a lot of similar things, but they did everything so unbelievably lightheartedly with unbelievably silly comedy, where MASH did unbelievably well scripted comedy with a very serious nature. And I have no problem in saying the quality of acting in MASH was amongst the best TV I think that's ever been produced. Where Gilligan's Island, it had one or two good people, but that was about it.
Oh, you went to the island to have fun.
Yeah. And look, I'm appreciative of the entertainment value from the Munsters, from Gilligan's Island, from all that kind of thing. But the drama that slipped in between the comedy with both MASH and All in the Family, it stuck with me. It honestly, I think, helped make me a better person.
Oh, you could actually put All in the Family today, even though you said the FCC would block most of it, but that show still carries a lot of a powerful message because, I've seen a couple of episodes in the last month or so, and they're just solid. It's a solid show.
Well, they did try to remake it, and I didn't watch it, where they did a live version of All in the Family. Maybe 8 months ago, and they're going to do it again, where they have it's almost like a Broadway play version of All in the Family. I'm afraid to watch it because I'm afraid of the spin that they're going to put on top of it that the original creators did not intend, is the way I'll put it.
Yeah, in fact, I remember that because I saw when they did both episodes, one of All in the Family and one of the Jeffersons. They took an iconic episode and redid it, and it was very good. But I mean, let's face it, for those of us who grew up with it, those characters weren't the same.
And I'll say it like this: there's another series of shows, and I'm sorry to keep going down this nostalgia alley. There's another series of shows that I think are equally important to me as a being, as a creature, as an entity, but I think are absolutely underappreciated, and that is the original Muppet Show. I remember as a family sitting down and digging in deep, philosophizing about the Muppet Show and what it meant and why it was and how it came to being, to where it stirred more conversations in my house almost as much as Sanford and Son did, because Sanford and Son was the kind of show as a kid I found out families either loved or hated, and there was nothing in between.
If anything, I'd like to go back to the old interviews with Red Fox to actually get his opinion on what he thought of the show, because I know there were a fair amount of compromises, and anybody who's even remotely familiar with Red Fox's comedy knows that pales in comparison to the comedy he had during, the late 50s and early 60s. To say his comedy was blue was really understating it.
Well, you know who I just found out was one of the writers for Red Fox? He did both his stand-up comedy and he did Sanford and Son.
Who was it?
And I'm trying to remember his name right now. He was Gary Shandling. Gary Shandling, the guy that died not too long ago. He was one of the head writers of Red Fox for like 6 years straight. I had no idea.
Huh. Now, actually, I'll match with. So, do you know who one of Richard Pryor's main writers used to be?
Ooh, I will say I was under the distinct impression Richard Pryor's content came from Richard Pryor. So to just have that somebody else was writing for him, I don't know.
Oh, when I give you the name, it'll make sense. Paul Mooney.
Oh, okay. Yes, that does make sense. Yeah. And that explains why Richard Pryor was so damn funny.
Oh, it's interesting because if you follow the line of Red Fox, Richard Pryor, and Eddie Murphy, it's funny how each one of these guys took from their predecessor, and it's again, like I said, it's phenomenal. That is comedy I really enjoy, especially if you go back to some of the recorded stuff that Richard Pryor did like in the early 70s. Oh, it's just hilarious.
So what I'm going to guess is Paul Mooney was almost like the MC Hammer entourage. I'm going to guess Paul Mooney was almost like in the Richard Pryor entourage. Not only was he getting paid, not only was he writing things, but I'm going to guess he was just around when Richard Pryor was going through all of his, ups and downs.
I don't know. I'd have to check it out because Mooney's career spans a long time. In fact,
at least 20 plus years. And he's the kind of guy who I believe maybe if we see like a documentary of his life, he would have been unbelievably connected with a great number of things. Because I'll tell you now, every time I see him and I hear him speak, he's damn funny.
So let's see. Yeah, it primarily credits him as being Richard Pryor's writer, but also he's appeared quite a few times in Chappelle's show as well.
Yep. Oh, you want to talk about a controversial show? Dave Chappelle did his damnedest to make his show more controversial than On the Family.
Well, actually, one of the other shows that I enjoyed, the first 2 seasons of In Living Color, that was phenomenal.
I talked to my wife about that show the other night and how very, 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 very few shows in United States history has blossomed more careers than the first couple seasons of In Living Color. Granted, oh God, Damon Wayans' brother was already successful. Keenan Ivory Wayans was already successful. But Damon Wayans, Jim Carrey, hell, even J-Lo owes their careers to that show. And there's at least 2 or 3 other people.
David Allen Greer. And Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx would have been nothing if it wasn't for that show. The first couple seasons of that show, I was an old Saturday Night Live fan, an SCTV fan. Oh, God, what was the one on HBO with the Sniglets? Which wasn't racist.
Oh, yes.
Sniglets, not necessarily the news. Sorry. Not necessarily the news. SCTV. Saturday Night Live. I was a huge fan of all of them. But then when In Living Color came out, it blew the doors off of what comedy could be. It did so many things so right. And there was a couple really bad examples of comedy between that. One of them had the fake scientist guy who's actually a mechanical engineer, Bill Nye. He was actually on one of them called it was out of Seattle, where he was speed walker. His comedy was he walked fast. It was horrible. It was horrible. God, it was so bad. He was not funny either. I can't remember the name of that show. It was so bad, though. I'll say that. Oh, God, it was so bad. So I witnessed really bad comedy, and then when In Living Color came out, damn it, I remember gluing my butt to the seat every week when that show came out, because I knew I was going to see something funny as crap, whether it be Homie the Clown, Fire Marshal Bill, or something else, and it was just damn good comedy.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Fire Marshal Bill, because they said of all the skits and characters they've created, Fire Marshal Bill was the most polarizing. They got so much hate mail from that. Yeah. Yep. And at one point, what is it? I think the Firefighters Association got involved and wanted NBC or whoever owned Fox at the time to pull the plug on the show.
Well, and that's when you know you're doing something right. And that's what I remember telling Jonathan Nadeau when he started the Association for Computer Users. I said, look, you know you're going to be successful when you get death threats, because what you're doing is literally threatening a lot of people's livelihoods. They are making a living off of selling proprietary software to do accessible computing. And if you are successful, people will want to kill you. Once you do that, thumbs up, brother. You're doing a good job. Unfortunately, you might get killed. You know, it depends on how threatening they see you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, all right. Well, listen, I think this is a good jumping off point, because if I don't, I could be at this till 3 or 4 in the morning.
I understand, Bruce. It is really damn good to see you, and really good to talk to you, man.
Good to talk to you as always, Dor. I will actually, I have some time tomorrow. I'll probably reach out to Jonathan to see what he thinks about joining us, because I know he has to be chomping at the bit to do something.
Well, and if there's a better time that meets both of your needs, just let me know, man. I'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah, Saturdays are usually the best for me, to tell you the truth, because Sunday I have the other obligation, and sometimes I don't get to that on time either.
I understand. No matter what, I'll be there.
Absolutely. All right, Dor. Listen, have a great night.
Thank you, man. I love you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay, now time to post-produce. Now let me come here and say, badang, badang. Badang, badang, badang. Wow, man. So much hurts. The pain is great. The pain is grand. That does not look right. No? Oh, I see. So once times P times a matey. No better butter. Okay, so I'm going to close that down. I'm going to now. I shouldn't have done that. Yep, it's going to be a little bit difficult. So let's come here. Let's launch the virtual machine. Let's click that. Let's come back to here. Let's say this. No, that. Studio. Now I'm going to have to kill this live stream sooner than later. It's going to drive me crazy. I am literally shocked at how much pain I put up with. Hmm. 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 So, hmm. Edit. Okay, I'm going to kill this live stream because I really need to post produce this in a timely fashion, or else it might take me 2 days to do. If it takes me 2 days to do, people will complain because that's what they do. Dang. Okay, videos, live. Okay, I'm going to stop the stream now. Thank you guys for coming out live. Thank you guys for watching live. I would say thank you for clicking like, but you didn't. And that's okay. I still love you. I'll talk to everyone again real soon.